Make a little bit room, like move if there's someone coming, so give him space, please. Tästä se kelasi. Voiko aloittaa? Siis kuinka kello on? Ei ole ihan. Okei. Hello, everyone. My name is Veli-Pekka Hämäläinen, and I'm introducing you to Graffathon. So, welcome to Graffathon, everyone. Yes, we are from DOT organization. It's a digital media club of Aalto University. There's our link to our site. Join us if you're interested in computer graphics, game development, demoscene, programming, and other stuff related. We organize excursions to companies, educational events, game nights, demo nights, game jams, graffathons. Yes.
If you want to help us organize these kinds of events, we would really like a helping hand. It's a hard work, and Veli-Pekka. Yeah, hi, I'm Lauri. I'm the chairman of DOT, and Veli-Pekka is the main organizer of Graffathon.
And also vice president.
Yeah, also the vice president. Yeah.
Yes, I'm the man behind this chaos, and I hope that we manage to. Of course, we can do this thing here. We can put everything together. They are already making the electric equipment, putting together. So no worries, everything will be in place after this presentation. So here are our sponsors in no particular order. So right there, Assembly, Futuramark, Tuxera, Futurize, Umpra.
Yeah, thanks to our sponsors.
Yes. And also these organizations who has helped us to buy free work, like Polygame. It's basically game and LAN organization of the Aalto University. You should join the Polygame if you want. They organize things like this, they really need more people to help them, and of course us. And OUBS for having this stream for us, or taking this scene with cameras, taking pictures. Thank you for that, really. Thanks. And AltoS for giving us this space. And Junction for helping us in marketing.
Okay, so you have come to Graffathon. You are going to make a demo this weekend. You are going to. And something to know about the competition. So the deadline for the demos is at 2 p.m. on Sunday, and the competitions, we will start watching them on 17:45 at the big screen. And if you haven't gotten your vote key yet, the paper thingy that has some numbers and stuff, you should get them from Teemu, who is there. Teemu is behind the table cleaning some shit up from the ground. And yeah, register graffathonpartysystem.dy.fi with the vote key to vote for the demos and to put your demo in there. Yeah, it's running on Soda's servers, so you know you can trust him. And no, it's not gonna crash. And yeah, we have two categories. So beginner. How many of you are beginners or in the beginner? Okay, nice. How many of you are advanced? Okay, a few. That's good. So for the beginner competition, we would like to recommend that you use processing for your productions. And for the advanced, you can use whatever you like. But if you use some strange hardware for your demo, please do the capture yourself or ask like very early about it, like what to do with it, so we can show it there. And the rules to the demo competition are found on graffathon.fi. I think you have visited that site already, hopefully. Did I forget something? No? Does anybody have questions about? Okay, Bjarke. Oh yeah. So if you don't know what the demo is, if you don't know what the demo is, don't worry. It will be explained to you in a moment. Yeah, and the schedule is on Friday. Well, yeah, 18:00. Welcome. Next, Markku Reunanen will talk about the demo scene. Then I will hopefully with Pauli. If he isn't here, then I'll talk about with myself. Oh, you have a question? So how do you define a beginner and advanced? It's basically up to you. If you've been here before, then you are probably advanced. But if you haven't, then you are probably a beginner. Or if you haven't done graphics coding before, then you are a beginner. Or if you've just done some little, then maybe you're a beginner. But it's up to you. And yeah, tonight at around midnight the doors will close and we will kick you out. And at 8 a.m. we will let you in. I hope you are in a line there. And yeah, tomorrow there's a presentation from Nobi, and there's a few presentations also on Sunday after the deadline for the demos. And there will be barbecue also. And the further information is on graffathon.fi about the schedule. So yeah, the public place will be closed Friday, Saturday. Yeah. Please keep the space clean. It would be really nice if you do some spill your drink, then wipe it out. And yeah, there's food, going to be food, free snacks when they arrive, barbecue on Sunday, yeah. Yeah, you can use the kitchen, but please be clean. Yeah, we have quite a few mentions about the tidiness, so I hope you remember. Is there anything else?
Yes, this is like where you get the info. You had the Telegram group given to you by the Eventbrite email. And also we have IRC channel at our IRCnet. It's called Graffathon. And the big screen over there, that big area, there's also information from there in certain times. And of course the graffathon.fi site, you can find also information from there and from the organizers also. Yes, thanks. And I will also tell you about the study point thing. Like you will get one study point if you we will give you a form which you will have to fill, Google form, after this event. So fill it carefully, and we will transfer the data to the school authorities who will decide that will you get point. It must be taken very carefully, the thing.
Are there any questions at this point? Okay, over there. Okay, so about the operating system specifications, we will have Windows on the Compo machine, but we will. I think it dual boots to Ubuntu 16.042. Okay, and do you have anything else about it? Linux should work, but if you capture the demo yourself and show that it runs in real time, then it's good. Okay, Bjarke? Yeah, so if you use processing, the cross-platform thing should be taken care of about. Okay. Yeah, you. You can use if you are going to use processing, then you can just code it on Mac and send it to the. Okay, if you are using something else, then come talk to us and we will figure it out. You should be able to like make a capture yourself, or then we'll figure something out. But please do that on Saturday. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think I repeated the questions, like roughly. Yeah, thanks. Any more questions? Okay.
Yes, this Okay, nice. Thank you very much. So
So is the junction next, or is it, what is it next?
junction.
Okay.
All right. Hello, my name is Jingwei, and I'm from Junction. Just to say a couple of words, what we do and what we are. So, okay. So probably a lot of you already know what a hackathon is, and Junction is basically a hackathon and a large community of developers and designers. And last year we brought together a lot of participants, a lot of cool partners to together build a lot of good projects. And building is a quite central part to Junction, which is why we do it in the first place, to sort of remove any excuses you have not to build stuff, because building something of your own is a very good feeling. And some common excuses to have is, for example, you don't have the money to buy some cool stuff. For example, if you want to try something VR related, you don't have the money to buy a Vive. Well, that's one thing that Junction tries to eliminate, is we provide everything hardware related at the event. So for example, you have Muse headbands, you can have thermal screens, you can have bus stop screens, you can have robots, you can have, I'm running out of stuff you can have, but there's a lot of stuff you can basically have there. And together, like, okay, you have the stuff there, but then you also have the partner company people who know how to use that stuff to kind of get the most out of it for you. So whatever you want to build, they try to make, be there and help you the best they can. And there are a lot of different tracks as well, so you don't have to be just a certain type to come here. We have tracks from, say, AI to VR to game related, and if some participants really want something specific, we try our best to make that happen as well. Now another excuse could be, well, you don't want to build stuff because you don't just want to be some cheap R&D for a company, let's say. That's not a problem at all, because building stuff doesn't have to be for some company. For example, this guy, he built his own rocket at Junction. No company told him to do that, but he did that. And then there was another team that had a HoloLens game where you catch kittens into a cardboard and you get points. And no company told them to do that. And now, for example, also last year's winner, Matti, in the middle, the bald guy, he won the main prize with his team. And in his own words, he didn't come to win anything. He just came there to build some stuff, and then he ended up with 20K in his pocket, which is quite nice. And obviously, the third excuse is you might not have time. So that's also not a problem, because in Junction you would have just a whole weekend of time to build whatever you want in a sort of environment where all the people do the same, build whatever they want. And that sort of environment and sort of you have 48 hours to hack, that sort of time pressure really gets you to do something you don't normally do. So especially if you have free food at the event as well. So just like Graffathon, you don't need to be any sort of master at the arts. You can be any skill level as long as you're motivated enough. And also it's great to have like different skill level people to kind of learn from each other. It's also kind of just this learning from building and coming to one place to actually build instead of just talking about building, which is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to try to stop talking. If you want to know more, we actually are working right here in the next hall. So just come to me if you want to know anything about Junction or anything that related. And actually, our registration for this year's event opens 1st of September, and the event itself is at the end of November. So stay tuned if you're interested, and come by and say hello. That's it. So enjoy the Graffathon.
Voitko laittaa sen? Ei, laita se silleen. Hop, viimeiselle laiville. Ja silleen, thanks. Joo. So, is there any more questions or anything more like that? Okay, so can Markku Reunanen give his presentation now? Okay. Okay, sorry about my bad presentation, because this is my first time when I'm in this kind of situation in front of people, so in this large crowd, so give me some spare.
Well, computer booting up. I'm Markku Reunanen. I'm a lecturer here at All the Arts at the Department of Media, but today I'm here as a civilian, so don't consider me a formal teacher here. Just a moment. Yes. This is not my first time standing in front of an audience like this, but never seems to get much easier. Yes, well, you're here to hear about the demo scene. You're here to actually do some demos of your own. Yes, there's the technical side to demos, like coding and all, doing graphics and music and all that, which is one side of it. But in addition to that, it's very much culture. It's a group of people with their own values and such things. And if you're getting into this, then eventually you will also learn about these, the softer side of things, like how people behave in those circles. And times I've been thinking, you often call, in all sorts of publications, you call the demos in a subculture. Well, is it subculture? Should we call them hackers? Is it more like just hobbyists? Well, I don't think there's any one right answer here, but a subculture ain't too bad. Just if you think of like subcultures like punks and such, say heavy rock fans, the demo sceners aren't quite like that. Not maybe as spectacular in their dressing, not maybe so like, you can't tell who's a demo scener just by looking at their clothes, if they are not like very nerdy obvious like this. And hackers, okay, that's one way to explain it. But then again, there's the whole hacker culture that is distinct and different to the demo scene. So I'm be a bit cautious of using that word either. Or hobbyists. Why not? Surely it's a hobby, but then when you say that something is a hobby, then it might like belittle it a bit. Like, okay, it's just a hobby. Because when you're really into it, there's a few here at least whom I recognize from those circles that they would probably tell you that it hasn't been just some like casual hobby, but they've really poured their heart into it. So calling it a hobby sounds a bit too little. So I don't have any solution to this problem. But at this point, there's already about 30 years of history to the demo scene, depending on how you count. So we are talking about a quite old phenomenon, especially if we think of digital culture, where there's like things pop up all the time and disappear. If there's something that has lasted 30 years, that's already quite like old-timer in the scope of digital culture. And somebody already asked for a definition of demos. Well, I will show you some examples if time allows. I will probably blow my schedule here, but usually they are described as real-time audiovisual presentations. And the purpose is usually to show that I can do it, like showcase the creator's skills. But demos are not the only thing that the demo scene people do. I will show you some other stuff. There's actually quite a big variety of things that come out of the demo scene. It's not just these demos, it's a lot more than that. Okay, I've been around since about 1990, when I got to see my first demos on IBM PC compatibles, MS-DOS computers back in the day. Some Amiga stuff as well, but I sort of skipped the Amiga. I wasn't fortunate to have one. I didn't even have a Commodore 64 in the 80s, so I'm a bit of an odd case here. But in 1990, I got to see some PC stuff and some Amiga stuff of the time, and got interested, like, what is this? I'm from Vammala, which is a small town in the western Finland, and I wouldn't say there was a lot of like people doing that, so me and my friends, we had to like pretty much like find everything out ourselves. Many of these demo scene groups actually come from very small cities, which is curious. It's not like they're from Helsinki, Turku, and Tampere. There's such people too, but very often small cities. Somebody's guessed that you don't have anything else to do in those small cities, so you need to take up something. Yes, then at some point I started looking into demos as also an object of study. So I've been doing demo scene research like academically for the last, what is it, about 13 years, writing articles. I defended my dissertation in February. That's also about demos. But I've also been doing things, so I would call myself one of them. I'm a member of the secret cult. It's not so secret anymore these days. But I've been programming stuff quite a lot on the MSX, on the MS-DOS computers for Linux, some for the Commodore 64 recently, and plenty of others. I've been porting demos, I've been writing about demos, I've been maintaining demos in websites, doing this and that over the years. And those people who study demos, usually they have some sort of background themselves in those circles. So those researchers don't come out of nowhere. Okay, where is the demo scene located? Largely, we are now almost at the heart of it. Maybe, I have to admit that maybe Germany is the heart of the demo scene in many respects, but Scandinavian, Nordic countries, they've been really active at this. Again, somebody jokingly claimed that you have those long, cold, dark winters, so you don't have anything else to do. Might have something to do with it. So if you think of the amount of people living in, say, Nordic countries, and the amount of demos coming out of these countries, it's pretty high. Germany is a big player. Then, like some Eastern European countries, some Western European countries. When you go to the south of Europe, then it starts diminishing. Like France, still somewhat active, but a lot less in Spain already, and Italy, and so on. And if you think of around the globe, there's like people here and there, some like little North American scene, but not that much. Tends to be European and mostly like Western and North European, with some active spots in East Europe and South Europe too. And of course, when we are talking of something that started in the mid-80s, there was the Iron Curtain that has hindered the East European scene quite long. There was interchange between countries. So for example, a lot of Western games have ended up in East Europe, even if it was quite heavily limited and controlled. But yeah, why is it so European? I have only some initial thoughts, but the US has its own hacker culture, which maybe ate up the scene there. And Japan, for example, that had already in the 80s had this computers available. That's something you need, of course. Then in Japan you have the otaku culture, manga cultures, and whatever goes with it, quite a lot. But my guess is that these sort of existing strong cultures, they sort of ate up the hobbyists, and there wasn't much left for the demo scene. There's one Japanese demo event, Tokyo Demo Fest. Some Europeans even go there. Bit of an oddity, but it exists. Okay, who's a typical scener? Let's see you, hands up. Okay, mostly guys, I have to admit. This is not to say that women wouldn't have been active in the demo scene, but if you think of the numbers, it's been a minority. And it used to be very much like that for these early digital cultures anyway, mostly male-dominant hobbies. This is of course changing now that everybody has mobiles and computers and internet and all. But back in the day it used to be rather male-dominant, which has left its mark on demos and the culture. Used to be teenagers and youngsters, but if you look at these guys who rose their hands, they don't look so teenagers anymore. I'm 41 myself, and I think I'm pretty much middle age in the demo scene circles. I would say still until the mid-90s or so, you would have this rotation, teenagers coming, people growing up and then leaving the scene, but then at some point the rotation stopped, so the teenagers stayed and then grew up to be middle-aged beer-belly men, and they are still pretty much the demo scene core group at the moment. Of course, there's people coming and people going. Some old-timers make comebacks and so on. There is some rotation, but this is today you couldn't say this is a youth culture anymore. Maybe it started as one, but not so much anymore. It's those guys with jobs and families. Okay, you will work in groups here too, and that is good and necessary. There's huge groups. There's been groups of more than 100 people. Big international groups we used to have Scoopex. Silence was big. We have our own Hirmu and so on. So some groups are really big, but usually a typical demo group is not that large at all. I'd say maybe less than 10 people. They've tended to grow these days, but when you actually do a demo, you need around 3 people. Might be more, might be less, but it's not really. When you do a demo, you don't usually have that many people participating. Here's a few examples of demo group names. This is how they look like. Well, what to say about this? What was cool for the teenagers in the 80s, they are often very well reflected on these names, like heavy band names and references to fantasy and science fiction and so on. And in addition to a group, you need a handle. And here you see a few examples of handles. How does a handle look like? Again, some fantasy references. Oftentimes some version of your name and so on. However you come up with a nickname. And then finally, the notation. How do you show that you're part of one group or the other? Here's Broti of Digital Talk. A full notation. Yeah, it's good to have a group. If it's a famous group, you get fame. If you're a good author, then your group earns fame. So it's a win-win situation. And then to do a demo, I think maybe here programming will be a bit emphasized. That's pretty much the purpose of this event. But you need others too. You need a musician, and then this word graphician, which is not English at all. You would say something like a visual designer or graphic designer, but in the demo scene you have this weird word graphician, which everybody understands, but it's not real English at all. And this is not that different to like any new media production. If you think of making games, if you think of making, say, like any interactive things, applications, whatever, you need pretty much this same role. So it's not that weird in that respect at all. Then there's other duties that group members can have, especially back in the day when it was more about software piracy. You would have all sorts of swappers, original suppliers, crackers, and so on. Some groups have had even mascots. That's not very common, but I know at least one Finnish group that used to have mascots in the caters. Then, parties. This is almost like a party. You get together, you have competitions, you program. The only main difference I can see to a normal party that people are not drunk and drinking here. So there's a slight difference, but this is almost a party, 95% a party. And parties started as copy parties. This is simplifying it a bit, but a copy party is a place where you go with your box of floppies, you copy the newest games to your friends and so on. This is something that used to happen mostly in the 80s and maybe still in the early 90s. These days, copy parties have largely died out. We have much more effective channels for wares distribution. But parties still remain for competitions, meeting people, and so on. And here's a few examples of current big parties. Assembly in Finland. Anybody been to Assembly? I've been a few times. Yep, okay, at least some of you. Anybody been to Revision? Okay, more like hardcore people, I think. Revision is in Germany, at Saarbrücken, and that's, I would say, the biggest pure demo party there is. So if you want to really know how it is and want to see the big names and see the best demos coming out yearly, then go to Revision. It's always at Easter time. The gathering used to be important. I will get back to that later. Anybody been to Alternative Party? Not only a demo party, but more like this, like digital culture event these days. But yes, there's also demos there, and something you can experience in Finland. Assembly and Alternative Party are Finnish parties. And if you want to see how it looks like without actually going there, there's the party photo site Slengpong, where you have quite, say, let's say, colorful content. Okay, this is how it can look like at a party. This is from Motorola Insight, I think 2005 maybe. And somebody can correct me, but yeah, you can get tired after a lot of coding. Okay, I already mentioned that it's not only demos that Demoscene people do. At these competitions, at parties, you have usually graphics competitions, you have music competitions, you have wild competitions where you can, say, show your home videos or maybe some hardware hack that doesn't like comply with the normal hardware requirements. Disc magazines, a lot less these days, but used to be quite big and important medium, especially in the 90s. These days, scene groups also do games. It's not frowned upon anymore. Maybe back in the day it was, but these days groups also do games. And not everything they do or we do is digital at all. Here's one example of a disc mag. This is raw, somewhere early 90s, I don't know, maybe 93 would be a good guess. So this is an interactive menu where you can select articles, pretty much like a magazine, but interactive. Not that different to actually a web page either. You have like hyperlinks, you can click on the titles of those articles and read them. There's background music playing and so on. And then some curiosities, you can change the color palette to suit your preference, and you can select like background music and a couple of viewing options. These used to be a big thing for discussion back in the day. And some non-digital stuff. There's party props for you. So when you go to a party, you often get this sort of wristband, or you get some badge. There's badges from, say, Motorola Insight, Assembly 94. This is my stuff from parties I've seen. Assembly 94. I lost the badge when going to bathroom, and then I was like really really like sad because I'd lost my precious badge, but then I could buy one out of an organizer, and he then like got French fries with it. so everything worked out, and I have my Assembly 94 badge, and a little story to tell about it. Abduction, that was in the north, Rovaniemi and Oulu. Doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And then some assembly wristbands and assembly t-shirt back there. Okay, now then a little chronology. What has happened during these 30 years? How have things changed? It's a rough estimate that there's maybe 200,000 demos in existence. That's quite a lot. If you go to the Demoscene website, some say in Finland we say poet, and you will find something like 70,000 around these days. And of course, that's not all the demos that have ever been published. So my best guess is there's maybe around 200,000 demos made, and that's quite a lot. And they are for various machines, so I will just show videos and use an emulator here for showing the stuff to you. Okay, it all starts here. Well, almost. This is Apple II from 77 or 78, about that time. Early 8-bit home computer, very popular in the States, a lot less here. But what happened there on Apple II was somewhat important. So you would have games. The game industry started developing on these machines like Spectrum, Commodore 64, Apple II, and so on. And people copied games. And what we can see here is a defaced game screen. When you start the game, it would show you the credits and the name of the game and so on. But this particular piece here is illegally distributed. I will maybe say a few more things about this legality later on, but what is important, the name of the game, the Holy Grail, don't know what sort of game it is, but cracked by the word GERD there, a black bag production, and then here some like BBS numbers where you can call and get more games. So this was, we could, from today's perspective, we could say this is illegally distributed commercial game, but back in the day there wasn't necessarily any legislation, so it wasn't illegal. Why they would need to crack something, what does this cracking refer to? It means removing copy protections. Because there wasn't like legal protection, then game companies had to resort to like all sorts of copy protection schemes, like a bit like ruined discs or like weird disk formats and such things, or some like code books that you would need to like type in some code to confirm that you actually own the game. And people didn't like that, so they cracked those protections away and then spread the game so you could just copy it. There's plenty of these screens at this art scene collection. Okay, then we get to a bit more familiar hardware. Who's ever used one of these? Okay, every year I ask this, I get less hands. Weird. Okay, 1983, very iconic computer of the 80s, the most popular home computer ever made. Not the most sold computer anymore, but it used to be that for quite a while too. So there's different estimates, but 12 million Commodore 64s is a pretty good guess. And that changed a lot of things. This was popular both in the States and in Europe as well. And then we start getting crack intros, not just these simple screens, which are essentially defaced game screens. People start adding these crack intros at the beginning. So before the game starts, you see the screen, there's some music playing, I'll show you a couple. There's greetings, there's credits, who cracked this, who spread this, who sourced the original, as it's called, so who got the original game for cracking, and so on. And boasting and this sort of like, well, what would young guys do to appear fancy in the eyes of their peers. Let's see a couple of these. So compared to those simple screens, we start getting to a lot fancier domain. Bit quiet. Can we get a bit more volume somewhere? Okay. Okay, okay. Yes, I see. Pretty much same stuff on all of these. There's greetings, there's credits, who did what is the group, usually a huge big group logo, you won't miss it. This is how crack intros used to look, and there's already something similar to demos here. You have animated stuff, you have text, you have greetings, all sorts of things. So there is a clear path from these crack intros to demos, but it's not quite so simple to just say that, okay, first they were crack intros and then they evolved into demos, because that's not quite like how it actually went. Okay, well, this we pretty much covered already. There's effects. Still you see a lot of effects on demos. And what they also did, it wasn't like when you cracked a new like dime game, some like a lousy title, that you would always take the trouble of doing a new intro. So it would reuse the same intro multiple times for different games. Okay, then at some point the legislation starts catching up. So this piracy becomes illegal. That's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one big reason why some people start getting the creeps. There's like busted high-profile pirates and so on. So that's one of the reasons why some people rather want to keep it legal, so they don't get in trouble with the postal office or the police. This wasn't so big in Finland, but especially in Germany, the police was very active, like chasing these software pirates and like kicking doors in and confiscating their disks and so on. So that's one thing that led to this certain divide between software piracy and the Demoscene. Because today's like Demoscene, well, I wouldn't say those guys are necessarily fully legal, but at least demos and like demo events, they tend to be. So it's not the same guys who's those like high-profile pirates anymore and those like demos in big names. There's connections, but I would say they are two different things these days. One group of people, swappers, they were the link between the illegal and legal side for quite a while. So it was the same people sending back and forth floppies with demos and cracked illegal games. But other than that, there was this like clear distinction between the two, little by little, during the 90s. Okay, then those single screens, we saw a crack intro there, they start evolving into these like larger compilations, collections of screens. You see one effect, like fancy screen like the crack intro, you press space, you get the next screen, you press space, and so on and so on. Usually, initially they were interactive, so you needed to press that space. And then toward the early 90s, especially on the Amiga computers, you start getting these non-interactive demos that just like run a bit like a music video from the beginning to the end, that you don't need to like touch anything, you just watch. It was initially were called trackmo. These days, pretty much any demo is like this. You don't go whacking any space bars there. Okay, yet another survey. Who's ever used one of these? Okay, almost the same amount, a couple of hands more. This is the Amiga 500, still from the same company, Commodore, which was the big name in the 80s. The most popular home computers were made by Commodore. This is for Amiga 500 from 1987. The first Amiga is from 85, but that wasn't yet that popular. But then this Amiga 500 was cheaper, smaller, and so on, a bit improved. So that hit the jackpot and became pretty popular, mostly as a gaming machine, especially in the Europe, somewhat in the States, but this is where it starts also diverging. So Amiga was very much a Nordic and German phenomenon, not that much in the States, even though they were sold there, but mostly popular in the Europe. Okay, here's one example of a Amiga mega demo, Red Sector mega demo from 1989. Well, you probably recognize the heavy music reference there, and this was still of this like interactive kind of mega demos. You press the space and move forward, but soon that style started disappearing. And okay, another survey. Anybody ever used an Atari ST? Okay, doesn't seem very popular. Okay, it was sort of underdog. It was competitor to the Amiga. It got out 1 year earlier, 84. It was poorer, both in graphics and sound, even though, of course, an Atari guy would say otherwise, but this is the sad truth there is. So about a similar computer, a bit worse, a bit faster CPU, but other than that, worse in graphics, worse in music. And something that happens at this point, like early 90s, we can start like telling like the demo scene like starts becoming the demo scene. There were like these cracker circles and demos made, but especially at this point, it starts becoming a really like well-defined community. They start defining, okay, what is in, what is out, who's in, who's out, who's insider, who's outsider. And it's not always nice. So especially, I remember mid-90s or so, the relationship with like game players wasn't necessarily very good. So, well, and there was of course a lot of fighting between groups and so on. So these like adrenaline-filled young guys, like they were pouring their hearts into the productions, but also a lot of fighting took place. So it wasn't necessarily, especially in the late 80s, it wasn't necessarily a very nice environment. If you were not like among the elite, you would see a lot of fighting. So it's a lot calmer now, so don't be put off by this. So now if you're a beginner, newbie, you're considered a beginner, not like a lamer who can't do anything, which would be a nasty thing. But these days there's a lot more understanding the word beginner, so don't worry about that anymore. Commodore went bankrupt in 1994. This was a big shock wave for the community. Eventually, the Amiga was like bounced here and there to different companies, but it didn't quite survive this Commodore crash. So little by little, the demo scene starts migrating toward more contemporary platforms. Maybe at this point we could see some Amiga demo. I'm gonna show this from a DVD image. Not gonna look quite right. We have here a fancy pants projector, which is probably 60 Hertz. What this was running on was Amiga 500 CRT display, like your old old TVs were running at 50 hertz and a completely different image generation mechanism. So this doesn't look quite right. It's not as smooth as it should and all. Okay, now I've said that, but just a reminder that it doesn't look quite like this on original hardware. It looks better. Some good bass. You never heard this bass on your display, of course. It has like a speaker like this. Many of these are quite long, so let's try something light. Ruby by Lemon Point. Well, maybe I should say something about the techie side of things, because anyway, this is a programming event. First of all, this was a very good example of those Amiga so-called design demos. It it wasn't just like screen after screen after screen with some like different music in every part. You started making like these so-called design demos where you have these smooth transitions from part to another, and this like well thought out soundtrack, and the demo follows the soundtrack. This is something you can still do in your demos, so don't just let the music like play in the background. Try to synchronize things to music if possible. It gives it some extra value. But yeah, Commodore 64 had 1 megahertz, and you would mostly program it using some, say, machine language monitors. So not even assemblers like compilers, but you would type in, using this machine language monitors, you would type in symbolic machine language to the memory of the computer. On the Amiga, you already had assemblers. Still, you're doing machine language. This is not like, typically they didn't use any like high-level languages like C and such that were available, but were not good enough for demo purposes. Too slow for that. So most of these like golden age Amiga demos have been made with like ASM1 and ASM Pro and so on. Assemblers, you type in 68,000 Motorola processor machine code to do all of this, like fancy transitions and everything. It was a bit of a drag, but then again, if you didn't know better, then you would just accept it. And at least you got very fast demos, which is important. Okay, on the Amiga, you start getting much better tools. All in all, you start getting Deluxe Paint. Anybody use Deluxe Paint? Yes, you have. Deluxe Paint, as we say in Finnish. You start getting trackers. Okay, trackers are still around. Deluxe Paint has died. Some of the stuff from Deluxe Paint lives on, but trackers are still around. It was Pro Tracker, Noise Tracker, such trackers, Octamed, and so on back in the day, where you have this like, you compose using these tracks where you place notes and then you play samples. Amiga has 4 sample channels, independent channels, so you would play like notes, you would play like different instruments on those 4 different channels. It wasn't like completely digitized music, but out of these like little digitized pieces, instruments, you compile those 4-track songs. There's still at least Milky Tracker. Anybody? Okay. Renoise. Okay, yeah. Renoise is pretty modern. It's more like audio workstation already, not this like old school tracker anymore. But it still has the same metaphor and interface, largely. Okay, then, well, it's not even then. The first IBM PC is 1981, so it predates most of those popular 80s home computers. But initially it was an ugly box like this, not capable of good quality sound or graphics. You would have 4 colors, graphics mode 420 by 200 pixels with ugly 4 colors, and beeper sound 1 channel, this like beep, 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 beep. So not a demo machine, not a game machine. But what PC was, it was popular, it was backed by IBM, and it was extensible. So you could improve the machine with these extension cards that we still have these days. Of course, a lot more advanced. 34 years. I never should put these years on slides because they get old. Yeah, initially poor, but especially in the 90s, the tide starts turning. So the PC starts catching up with the Amiga, which was the king of the hill up to then. So you start getting sound blasters that are still around. You start getting Gravis Ultrasound. Anybody ever owned Gravis Ultrasound? Okay. Popular, especially for Demoscene people, but also for gamers. It's a bit like Amiga on steroids. It has a lot of these digital channels, so you can play, I think, for Gravis Ultrasound, 32 channels side by side. And VGA cards, you start getting better resolutions, you start getting better speeds. One big technical difference, I guess I can talk a bit techie here, being Aalto. Usually I need to, with talking to humanists, I need to tone this down a bit. But one big difference between the Amiga and the PC of the 90s was that Amiga had this planar graphics. The original Amiga and then those like better Amigas, like Amiga 1200, they had planar graphics, meaning you had bit planes, not like 1 byte per pixel, but you would have bit planes, and out of 8 bit planes, or 5 or how many you ever had. Like you take 1 bit out of each bit plane and that constitutes the color of the pixel. Not like one nice chunky pixel there. PCs had chunky pixels and that made some things a lot easier. So you have, say, on VGA, you have 1 byte per pixel, 256 colors. Very easy to do certain things compared to these planar graphics where you need to address many bit planes to draw one certain color pixel. And then toward the end of the 90s, we start getting affordable 3D accelerators. Maybe now we get more hands. Anybody ever had a Voodoo card? Okay, TNT. Okay, that wasn't so popular. Okay, but nevertheless, at this point, it's not those workstations anymore, like Silicon Graphics and those like tens of thousands of euros workstations. You start getting 3D acceleration at homes, and that changes demos again. Okay, here's one screenshot of inside a finished demo by CNCD from 1996. And what we can observe here too is like changing times. It's not just tech here. You can see this like cool guy there and this cool hairdo, this like colorful backgrounds and so on. So also the style starts changing. What happens in the 90s, you start getting Photoshop. That also, like Deluxe Paint, Photoshop changed demographics very, very heavily. So you start getting this like layered graphics very much toward the end of the 90s. And let's see one example of such. Hard Candy by Blasphemy from 1999. And you can see this like layered approach, layered graphics all over the place. afraid may need to cut it a bit short. But what has changed here? We don't have 1 megahertz, we don't have 7.12 megahertz of the Amiga. We are talking about hundreds of megahertz already. PCs with true color displays. This was still for the MS-DOS, but at this point you wouldn't usually do this on like any assembly language anymore. You would probably use C, little by little going towards C++. So the tools improved and graphics most likely Photoshop. So it starts being a bit more like today's tools. You could still use pretty much the same tools. This was still for the MS-DOS, but then around 2000 or so, it starts drifting toward Windows. There's, I think, also a Windows version of that demo already. Okay, but we've just covered what for. There's many more computers, especially in the 80s, it was really colorful. There were tens of different computers. Anybody ever used Spectrum? MSX? I didn't think so. I've been pretty active on the MSX. That was sort of, in some sense, the PC of its time. Multiple manufacturers made MSX computers that were compatible between each other. Never a popular demo machine, but there's some demos for that too. I've done plenty myself. Okay, anybody Amstrad CPC? No, I didn't think so. Wasn't very popular. Some were sold in Finland. Mostly this was, I think, France and the UK were Amstrad countries. Okay, Oric, I won't even ask, but I have one of these. So there's demos for pretty much any platform out there. It's not just because like people used to have them. It's not like they were demo computers back in the day. Some of these are pretty new things. So there's also this sort of spirit in the demo scene that you need to conquer one more new platform. There's no demo for that, so you need to make it. I've been doing this plenty myself, and there's others who are like-minded. So we get for all sorts of game consoles, we get for all those 8-bit computers, mobiles, the weirdest devices run demos. Not many, but at least there might be one or a few. And today, browsers are starting to be pretty viable platform for demos. First, there was this Flash demo scene, not very big ever. Some Finns were active at this. JavaScript today is, of course, the platform for web-based demos. There's already good ones out there. It's not like somehow like a bad choice at all today. You have like WebGL and stuff that lets you do faster things than before. Here's one demo running on PlayStation Portable. You need to hack the PSB to run this, but there it is. This is by Black Lotus from 2007. Pretty nice demo. It has like accelerated 3D graphics there and all running on the PlayStation hardware. Okay, then what happened to those old computers? Commodore 64, did people just ditch them, their Amigas and so on? Well, many did, but not everybody. So there's a lot of nostalgia. Now the people who were active in the 80s, early 90s, now they are often coming back. Maybe you've noticed this around the web, like there's a lot of retro going on, like Nintendo retro, Sega retro, Commodores and whatever, all sorts of Facebook groups. So retro is again very much in, and like half of indie games have some like blocky pixel graphics. For nostalgia reasons, of course, but of course it's easier and quicker to make than full-blown graphics as well. But there's a lot of community revolving around these old computers and still active demo scenes on these old machines. First it was largely Commodore 64 that came back. There was this like dip in the mid-90s. Now Commodore 64 is as popular as ever in these demo scene circles. There's even a Finnish Commodore 64 party going to happen this fall. That's going to be, what is the place after these municipal joinings? I don't remember. I think it's Aka these days, yes. So there's going to be, I think in November or so, there's going to be this zoo party that is solely Commodore 64 demo party. So if you want to dive to the deep end, then go there. It's a really nice event. I was there a couple of years ago. And then the Amiga is also coming back. There's more demos for the Amiga these days than in many years. So somehow those old timers, they are coming back, and they are also supporting their old childhood computers, not necessarily going for these like powerful PCs of today. Okay, what happened to the demo sceners? There's this typical story that people went to the game industry. That's not all wrong, but if I think of the people I know, it's not really true either. Some did, some not. I know comic artists, I know web designers, I know teachers, I know researchers who are demo scene people. So yeah, musicians are the examples here. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you go to the game industry. But surely you acquire some useful skills that you can use in the industry as well. You learn to code, you learn to do music, graphics, so on. So they are useful skills, but having said that, nobody did it for that. Nobody did demos to become a big name in the ID industry. They did it for its own sake. This is something I want to underline here. It's not like a preschool for the industry. Okay, that was the past of the scene, and what about the future of the scene? Well, as I see it, the demo scene isn't dying. There's been these predictions of, okay, the demo scene is dead or dying. They predicted this from the late 80s already. The newcomers are ruining the scene and so on. And the Amiga is ruining, and the PC and the Windows and the accelerators, everything is ruining the scene. Windows is ruining the scene. Okay, I might agree with that, but that's another story. I'll try to keep my opinions to myself. The fact is, there's still parties, there's still demos coming out, so the demo scene is far from dead. But to be honest, it's largely the same people who were active in the 90s. They are still active. They are the ones doing demos. So new blood is, of course, welcome, but largely it is the same people. So maybe when the last demo scener kicks the bucket, then he like turns off the light, and the demo scene is dead at that point. But let's see. Nobody knows yet. But it's a fact that people are older these days. It's not teenagers anymore. That has changed some things for better as well. People have a lot less need to fight with each other. There's certain decline in activity, but it's very slow, so I'm sure we will have demos in 10 and 20 years from now. Okay, now we are talking about the time span of 30 years. That's quite a lot already. And if we think of those computers, the media we had, like those big floppies, 5.25-inch floppies, if you remember those, these are deteriorating. The old computers are dying. Now we have good emulators. That's one solution. You can still run old demos very well on emulators, but it's not the real thing. You can get some of these machines very easily still. You can get Commodore 64s still for cheap, like 50 euros. And with a disk drive, maybe 100 euros. There's good support. There's plenty of them around. When we get to those like rarer platforms, it might be already a lot trickier. But the fact is, old computers are dying. Then one way to preserve demos is videos. These videos I've been showing you are from these Mind Candy DVDs that will let you view those Amiga demos when you don't have the real hardware. And it's a bit better than YouTube quality at least. Then one more thing what we can do is migration or recreation. In other words, taking an old demo and then recoding it for new hardware. This happens, but not very often. There's not that much reason for it. But if we think of, say, media art, software, games, it's the same challenges we're facing with demos. Deteriorating hardware, deteriorating media, disappearing knowledge, and so on. So there are some challenges. And when you view something on YouTube, it's not like quite on the real hardware, especially when you're talking about those retro computers. Okay, if my presentation wasn't enough and you want to learn more, well, go to that PUE or POET and see how the demo scene is. That's maybe your first stop. You can find there tens of thousands of demos. You can't run them there directly, but usually you have, like, say, YouTube links there, or you have file download links, so you can actually access the demos as well. And there's discussion on demos and contemporary issues, what goes on in the scene. One of the older big books is this Thomas Polgarov, a Hungarian guy. His Freaks book, Brief History of the Demo Scene, that sort of covers the first half. Then he was supposed to do the second half, but got messed up in some Hungarian politics and lost his interest and got pretty heavy feedback for the first book. So I don't think the second volume will ever be out. At least it hasn't in 10 years, so I wouldn't hold my breath. But that's one of these, like, quite broad and good introductions to the early scene. Anders Karlsson has written, he's also written plenty on text art. If you're into that, you probably have come across his name. He's written about demo scene. This is a lot easier, small article to digest. Then my licensure thesis, which I actually did for, what was it? It wasn't School of Science back then, but anyway, I used to be a student here, so I did this computer demos, what makes them tick. That's freely downloadable online. That's a PDF version of my licensure thesis. Sort of academic, of course, it has to be, but it's still, like, I think, an easy read. My personal opinion, of course. My dissertation from this year, Times of Change in the Demo Scene, a creative community and its relationship with technology. You can download it likewise. Don't go to Doria, because there's only the introduction. Go to Demoscene Research or my webpage, and you will find the full version with the introduction and all the articles. It's a compilation dissertation, so you will find the full version. I've taken my chances, and Springer hasn't, like, asked anything, so at least as of now, you can still download it freely online. If you're good at German, do check Kunst, Code und Maschine by Daniel Botz, a German dissertation, later edited into a proper book. That's a really in-depth look into demos as art. He approaches demos as an art form. The first days of cracking have been documented by Patryk Wasiak, a Polish guy. He's Illegal Guys, which you can find online for free, that documents how the software piracy got started. And there's also this wider screen thematic issue on demos, an academic journal with plenty of articles on demos. And then POET, I already mentioned. When I see foreigners and they say PUE, then, like, it just sounds so weird. CSDB, that's a Commodore 64 database. Plenty of stuff there. That also, it's not just demos, they also feature, like, cracked games and such there, because that's what the Commodore scene used to be initially. DemoZoo is pretty much like POET. Scene.org has files. Slengpong, I mentioned already, colorful party pictures. And the Demoscene Wikipedia article, if you check that, you get the basics, if you don't feel like skimming through hundreds of pages of academic text. Okay, thank you. And now, before I let you out, now I'll take the chance and show one production by me now that you have no choice. Just sit there. Okay, here's a little menu where you can view our old demos. They were getting hard to run on contemporary hardware, so I made this sort of like wrapper and a menu to run those old, more or less interesting products. These are the first one, I think. This one, yeah, Division by Zero is an awful slideshow we did in 1993. So, yeah, well, what you can do with this is also follow our development. A lot of stuff happened in a few years. When you start getting into it, in a few years you develop a lot. But I will show you Boy, and this is from 2008 from Icons, a demo party held in Helsinki, and we happened to win the demo competition with this. It's accelerated OpenGL, originally made for Linux, and all done in C. I wasn't into this fancy editor, so I've written all of this in the nano editor of the Linux box I had. And everything else, graphics, 3D programming by me, and then music by my friend Jarkko Rotsten, a good friend and a group mate. But let's see what we came up with.
That's wrong. Let me show you again. You use this control, get your focus, you see? Or this one here in the right-hand corner, to lock the sweep. Give her to somebody else. I ask for a man.
We don't have a man with her qualifications. There is the man.
What's wrong with her? She's a woman, isn't she?
Oh, wait a minute. You got a lot of women in your department. What's wrong with one more?
Did you ever hear of the straw that broke the camel's back?
They're good workers. Accurate, quick to catch mistakes.
Yeah, but that comes out of books. I work with them, mister. I know what happened. Give her to somebody else. I ask for a man. Give her to somebody else. I ask for a man.
What does happen?
Yes, that's a good point. Like maybe I've been showing the like better end demos, which might be discouraging. There's a lot of trash around, so don't be shy. Okay, if somebody wants to bump me on the nose for the blatant sexism on this demo, then I advise you to consider the message once more. But all things must come to an end, so let's skip to the end. That's a view from the assembly, the big party hall. This is how it looks like. Pretty impressive when I went to my first big party in '94, seeing like thousands of other Demosceners there, hundreds of computers with the screens glowing at the Helsinki old ice hall. That was quite an experience. But at this point, I thank you, and if there's any questions, I guess we could afford maybe a couple. At the end. So what were the names shown at the end of the demo? They were the greetings. Like in those crack intros already in the 80s, you would send greetings to your fellow groups. This also builds your prestige. When a top group greets you, that builds your fame. So we were sending, of course, greetings to our business partners, as it said there.
Crushing judgment of well, I guess Poland counts as East Europe.
Yes, well, I don't want to downplay East Europe. It just like took them quite a while before, especially because of the Iron Curtain. So after that, they really started like invading the scene, so to speak, and like improving their quality heavily. And Poland is a curious example now that you asked. It used to be very heavily this Atari 8-bit computer land. There's this curious like there's these pockets of computers in Europe. Because of the Iron Curtain, you had this like COCOM, which regulated the stuff you could sell to the East Bloc, and you couldn't sell their like powerful computers. But certain computers you could sell. It was messy business because you couldn't necessarily just like sell them like that. You needed to negotiate and like maybe like do some like barter with them. But what happened in Poland? They got plenty of these Atari 8-bit computers there, and that was a curious pocket there. There's other pockets like this all around East Europe where they dumped like some non-successful computers from the West, and then that created like local hobbyist cultures there. But no, I don't want to downplay Poland. There's like notable Demosceners. Then when the Iron Curtain started falling down, they very heavily invaded the Amiga scene and are still active there. So yes, it's a fine line, but at least until certain point, like it has to do with the worldwide politics. The East Europe was sort of like occluded from the main body of the demo scene. Having said that, there was always this sort of interchange between the two sides. Very informal and secretive, but there's been this trade. It should be studied more, but yeah, okay. But no, I don't want to downplay, especially not the Poles, because they've been quite respected in the Amiga scene. Anything else?
Parallel with development of electronic music. And another question is, how essential are the drugs to this
Okay. Well, I will start with the first one. Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because I was going to say something about that, electronic music. There's different eras, like the 80s computers had pretty simple sound chips. You had like few channels of these like square channel beeps. so you couldn't do just anything with them. They have a very characteristic sound, which is already again like retro cool, and people use like Commodore 64s and Game Boys and all for all sorts of concerts and so on. But largely on the Amiga, when you start having the like sample music, when you can start using real instruments that you sample from, say synthesizers, that was very common. The thing is that at that point, it starts sounding a bit more like real music. Amigas have been used for real music productions, and it definitely goes in line with electronic music. Techno has always been very popular in demos, and different kinds of electronic music later on, not just that pumping techno. Yeah, well, yes, well, the second question, I don't know if I can give any conclusive answer to that, but well, I would say maybe drinking is more like typical use of substances in the demo scene, but there's various tracks and various people who do various things. I won't speak on their behalf. Well, at that point, well, I don't think it killed it, but at that point there was this possibility when the MS-DOS was dying. There was this possibility that we could have taken a different route and gone to the Linux side of things and go on with the open software and all. I did myself, but then unfortunately the demo scene always follows the mainstream, and there's not much you can do about it. Commodore 64 was a mainstream computer, Amiga was a mainstream computer, MS-DOS was mainstream, Windows was mainstream, so the demo scene always follows the main platform. There might be some resistance and fighting, and some people don't do that, but largely you could say that demo scene is rather mainstream in their technology use. I would have wanted to take the other path, and that's why, for me, Windows largely ruined the scene, but that was only me, not for everybody.
Would you say that some demos have changed the demo scene or the culture?
Surely, yes. If you look at demos of the same time, you can see that they pretty much look not identical, but they look similar. So often it happens that there's some very influential demo from an influential group, and it kind of sets the trend for the following few years. Also, influential effects are quickly copied to other demos. So yes, there is this sort of like trendsetters that then set the like overall mood and style for demos to come. Okay, we are also running out of time. Maybe one more. Yes, I didn't really go into these intros at all. So the question was, what about the size limits? Yes, I mostly talked about the full-size demos here, and their size has been growing and growing because hardware and storage is bigger and more powerful. But you have these size-limited categories of competitions as well. For example, one very popular size is 4 kilobyte intros, so you need to fit everything including the code, music, graphics into 4 kilobytes, 4096 bytes. You will of course use a lot of like generative audio and you use compression and so on. 1 kilobyte intros have become increasingly popular. 4 kilobyte intros became so good already that people wanted more challenge. And also making a good 4K intro these days takes a lot of effort. With 1K intro, you can still like do one nice effect and vary that a bit, and you can do well. But to do a real impressive 4K intro, you need to have a lot of content these days. 64K intro used to be a popular category back in the day. It was considered small, but then the tools have improved and the coding techniques have improved. So these days, 64 isn't that popular. Like a proper good 64K intro, you cannot tell it apart from a demo. It looks like a full-blown demo with no like practical size limit. Then there's like really small ones. You start getting to 256 byte intros, 128 byte intros, 64, and even 32 byte intros, which is at that point you start pushing the limits. Usually at this point you go to MS-DOS. It has these really tiny executables. It doesn't have like any headers for the executables. It's just all code with these COM files. So all you put in there is code. So you have like pretty impressive 256 kilobyte intro, 256 byte intros. Mostly they are for the MS-DOS. It's easy to set the screen mode, get something on screen, and you don't have like any overhead of those like executable formats. Okay, but I think there's going to be a next presentation, so I'm giving up here. Thank you, and I hope you have a nice event here. And some of you maybe go to Assembly and Zoo, and we'll meet there. Come and talk if you dare. Thank you.
Hello again. Thanks for Markku Reunanen. So I will be giving the demo programming basics with processing by myself because Pauli couldn't make it. Let's see if I can make it. So now I have this mic and I should also code at the same time. So good guys from OUBS are setting up a mic that can be mounted into my shirt so I don't have to code with one hand. Do you want to have a break? Yes. Okay. Well, if you want to go to the bathroom or something, now would be a good time. And like in 5 minutes, the presentation would start. So yeah, thanks. Come on in. People are coming in. Cool. Okay, I think most of the people are here. So, are still coming? Yeah. Fuck. Okay, still some people coming in. Yeah, I think we can start. So, hello again. I'm going to tell you a bit about processing. I should have had a co-host with me, but I'm now all by myself here. And, but yeah, let's learn about processing. I am Lauri Shagan-Saikkonen. I'm actually not a professional graphics programmer. I do audio code at Musician. But yeah, so processing. How many of you have coded it before? Okay, quite a few. Nice. So you can correct me when I'm wrong. I'm probably often wrong. But yeah, processing is a simple programming language and an IDE mainly for visual presentations or visual expression. So you can make art with it. And it's based on Java. Okay, nobody booed, so it's a good thing. There's also JavaScript and Python ports of it, or versions. But I think the one that's based on Java is the most stable. Bjarke, you have some question?
It's more like preprocessor, so it compiles to Java, but you won't see it.
Okay, so yeah, it compiles to Java, but you won't see it actually. So it's actually not Java, but it's kind of based on it. And it's
easier.
Yeah, it's easier. Yeah, but yeah, it works on Windows, Linux, Mac OS. And well, I should probably add that you can get it from processing.org. You can download it. And yeah, so using processing, first we have a function called void setup. This means that it does not return anything, the function. How many of you don't know about programming? Okay, a few. But yeah, you can ask me after it if there's anything unclear, but I try to keep it clear. So function is a piece of code that is run and you can call it somewhere else. But always when processing, you run a processing program, it calls void setup first. And you can set the screen size and the draw mode in it using size and then the screen size in Y and X axes and then the draw mode. And the screen size can also be set in void settings, but we won't go there now. Just something to know. And then there's void call, which also returns nothing, but it's called every frame. So every time the screen renders, or before it's rendered, void draw is called. And generally you want to clear the screen at the start, so calling background something. I'll show you some code afterwards. And then you draw whatever you like. You draw your demo in it. You can of course call other functions from these functions. So and you can define your own classes and whatever. So that's cool. Okay, time for some code. Is there any questions at this point? Okay.
Do you need the Java runtime environment?
So do you need Java runtime environment for processing? No, I don't think you need it.
It comes one plus it together with the software installer.
Yeah, yeah.
So it like contains some private Java runtime. So in practice you don't you run the software and it works.
So yeah, you don't need it.
But on Linux you do.
Oh, I don't remember this. It's so long ago since I installed it in Linux. So you need it in Linux apparently. Okay. But yeah, let's do some code. I did this in 5 minutes in the when Mark was holding his presentation. So it might not be good code. But here's a function called void setup. And this sets up the screen. You call size, you give it the width, and then you give it the height. You cannot actually define these with variables, so by defining like int screen y is 640. You cannot put this in here. It won't compile. But if you call this in settings, you can actually do this. But let's do it now in this simple way. No shit. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say those words. And then there's background 0, which means that it's all black, the screen. You can also say 0, 0, 0, so its background is RGB values, and they are between 256 and 0. So now, I haven't defined draw, but let's see if this works. I'm not actually sure. Oh, does work. So, nice. So, let's go to the void draw. So this is the function which draws everything.
Would you increase
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think you cannot.
I cannot.
Yeah, I understand. It's a bit, yeah. I'll try to make it a bit bigger. It's 26. Can everybody see this? Okay, cool. So here's void draw. It's called every frame. Now if we run it, it shouldn't affect anything. And it does not affect anything. We could clear the screen by calling background. And we can make it red. So it's 256, 0, 0. Now it should be red. Yeah, nice. Let's get rid of that first. Let's assume that you don't know how to clear the screen. Or actually, let's draw a rectangle first. So you call rectangle. It defines the position of the rectangle, and then it defines the size of it, x, y coordinates. So now you should get a rectangle, but it's not doing anything. It's not very interesting. This is a shit demo. So let's make some movement. Okay. So first I'll define that a variable called w, which means width. You should never use these kinds of one-letter variable names, but I'm lazy. So for this purpose, let's do this. So we define the width and the height. Width and height names are Varattuja sanoja, soda. What is it in English? Yeah, reserved words or variables. These tell the script.
General name for the variable name is identifier.
Yeah, okay. So it's reserved identifier. You can call, if you say width in your processing code, it will tell you the width of the screen. Then we can say that float t is time. It's kind of like time. I could say it's time, but I'm lazy, so I use one letter variables. And it's a floating point value. I explicitly cast it into a float and call millis, which returns milliseconds from the start of the program. And I divide it by 1,000, so it gives me seconds. So float t, if it's 1, it means it's 1 second has been gone in the program. And then we set the size of the rectangle to 60, because why not? Then we set position x. So the position in the x-axis, it's, I don't know, it's math. You can call sine t, which gives you like the sinusoid of t. So the time variable. So now it should be doing like this kind of movement. And yeah, I make it fit into the screen. And then there's float position y. It's also sinusoid of t, but there's I multiply it with pi. So it should make a kind of different movement. And then I call rect, which should draw a rectangle. Now I'm not clearing the background, so let's see what happens. Okay, it's moving like a worm. And yeah, it's doing this kind of movement. Okay, that's pretty interesting. If we clear the screen, that's not a shit demo. That's a good demo. Yeah. Oh, now I drew a red background, so it's, of course, it's red. And because the screen is cleared every frame, then you won't have those previous rectangles in there. Yeah. Are there any questions at this point? You can say, for example, if you want to draw multiple of these, you can say, let's draw 30 of these rectangles. So let's make it a worm, but let's make it a bit different. Actually, I should probably set the position inside this loop. And let's add t plus float I times, I don't know, 0.3. Let's try and copy that here. So now it should maybe do a worm. I'm not sure. Haven't tried. Okay, well, it's kind of a worm, but yeah, it does that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Nobody had any questions? No? Okay, nice. You know everything. GNU Rocket. Okay, now we get to the fun stuff. Because it's really time consuming to like say that, well, there's like this time t that defines like a time in the demo. But if you have like something going on in your demo in like 1 minute mark, so you should watch it till like you should watch it every time to the 1 minute mark, and that's not very fun to watch the same effect all the time. So you should have like some kind of system to sync your demo and to move in an editor, so you can move the variables and go directly to the 1 minute mark. GNU Rocket comes to help with it. So it's a protocol for animating parameters of the demo with an external tool. There are multiple different editors that use the Rocket protocol, and the protocol is available on multiple languages. So for example, there's original is written in C, but Antti Hirvonen made, who was the first organizer of Graffathon, he made a port for processing. Yeah, but we'll get to it. So the Rocket editor can be found here. It's in GitHub, GitHub Rocket/Rocket. You can compile the editor, but if you don't want to compile it, you can get the binaries from, can you get them from here? Yes. So here are the binaries for the Rocket editor. They have been compiled in 2014, so you might want to get the fresh version. There was a problem with the newer editors with the older Rocket, but I made a bug fix a few weeks ago. Should work. Yeah, so you get Rocket from there. Yeah, and you should know that there's the keyboard commands or shortcuts for it. So please use those, because you cannot access all the functionality of it by visually using the tool only. And the binaries are available at, that I told about. Let's run Rocket. So, yes, I allow it. It looks like this. It's a bit boring looking tool at the moment, but we'll do something nice with it because we connect it to processing with Moonlander. So it's an implementation of GNU Rocket for processing. It uses the Minim library for sound and timing. So you have to install the Minim library from Sketch, import library, add library, and filter Minim. I have already installed it, but you can install it from here. And yeah, and it uses the file sync data.rocket. So it should, your sync data.rocket file should be saved to the same folder as your processing Sketch. So when you save your processing Sketch somewhere, okay? So there's like this get Sketch thing. You should put it there, the sync file. And yeah, you can get it from Antti Hirvonen's GitHub page, and you can download the binaries from here, or it's not binary code, it's some Java stuff. I don't know. I'm not the technical guy. And here's a GitHub IO page for it also. So you might want to use these resources. If you want to access this knowledge afterwards, you can go to tinyurl.com/graffathon 2017 processing. Ask me if you cannot remember the link. And yeah, let's use Moonlander for something. So first you must import the library by using import moonlander.library.star semicolon, and import also Minim because it's used for timing and sound. And then you must define this object Moonlander in the same place where you initialize import the library. So it's import moonlander.library.star. Yeah,
for ddf.minim.star, yeah. And then Moonlander, let's call it Moonlander, nice. And in the setup, you must set it up. So you must say that Moonlander, you initialize it with the soundtrack using this function. So you have a track.mp3, or it can be whatever, WAV or something. And you say the BPM, which is the beats per minute of the track. And then how many times you want a beat to be divided in. So if you say 8, it should divide the beat to 8 values. And then you call Moonlander start. So let's write that. I don't have a track actually at the moment, so I'll have to drag a track into the init. Sorry, I cannot talk and code at the same time. I'm not used to this. Init with soundtrack. Okay, so how do you find the BPM of the song? If you have a musician, or if you are a musician, you probably know it. If you make electronic music, if you just acoustically like play some guitar, then it's probably harder, because this is designed for this kind of thingy, where the tempo is like very stable. But if you make organic music, like some hipster, I don't recommend it. It's boring. Then it's a bit harder. But if you have this kind of techno thing, it's easy to sync it up, and you can like tap alongside the music and use some online tool to calculate the BPM from the song. It's not probably super accurate, but it's something. And yeah, you can use like some public domain songs, and sometimes they tell you the BPM, which is nice. So I have no idea what's the. I don't have a track right now, but let's say it's 140 because it's best BPM. And let's say we want to divide it into 4 blocks each beat. And then we call Moonlander.start. How long have I been talking? I have no idea about reality anymore. So now it starts Moonlander, but it doesn't do anything. So let's continue with this. You call Moonlander update at the beginning of your draw function. Draw. No, update. If you notice bugs, please let me know. And then double value. What? Why is it? You shouldn't say double with the big D. You should say double value. Actually, I don't know if it's. Let's say it's float because we are using floats anyway. So float value. Well, let's say T. And T is Moonlander get value, yeah. And now we say what kind of value we want. It creates a new track in the Moonlander Rocket editor, which is this. So it doesn't have any tracks. The track should be here. So now, if we call get value, and it returns a double, so we say it's a float. Okay, and let's put another one of these. So now it should create a new track called value. I hope this works. No, it doesn't work because I don't have a track in my folder. Wait, where am I? No, is it in Graffathon? Yeah, it's sketch. Okay, and then we move a file from codit Graffathon inst. No. What? Oh, no, actually, let's, fuck. No, what did I do? Did I close my terminal? Oh no, I lost all progress. Let's go to Graffathon. No, I cannot use the command line. So let's copy the track from Graffathon stuff inst. Is there something? Demoscene.wav and copy it to the sketch folder. Now, when you look into the folder, it's there, it's Demoscene. Oh, nice. So let's change this to Demoscene. And now it should work. It's actually 100 BPM. So okay, it doesn't move, but I have the Rocket system open, so it has connected via TCP to this editor. And let's say we want to go from 1 to 10. But it's now if we play this by pressing space, okay, it doesn't do anything. And then it was, it's not a good demo. So how do I do page up with this? So we put an interpolation mode. You can see there's a red line. I pressed I. So it should now interpolate from 0 to 10 in this time frame. So now if we play this, and it stops. So it's a good demo. Yeah. And you can use like full screen shaders with this processing. I made this like a few years ago when I made something. So it now loads fragment shader from. How many of you know about shaders actually? Oh, a few. Okay, that's good. So it now does some ray marching stuff and presents a frog image. So, okay, well it doesn't work. Oh, because I have Rocket open. So if I close the Rocket, or I should have shown actually in the last example. Yeah. Oh, this is bad. Sorry. So let's use this again. This example that we started from scratch. Where's the page up in Mac? In this 2016 Mac? I don't know. So yeah, it starts now like this. And if we want to save this file, we call save as. Mac OS, no. I don't know if I can show you contents of my. Can I unplug my computer? Does it make your stream broken? Well, I'll do it anyway. Okay. Now we're back online, hopefully. Nice. Okay. Actually. No. But yeah, we can save it here. So we save it as, what was it called? syncdata.rocket. So now it's saved in there. Now we can close this demo, and we can close the Rocket editor. Now if we run it, what will happen? So it works. Yeah. So that's how it works. And then, okay, this just renders a full screen shader and presents a frog. Yeah, that's pretty good. And yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
What did you use for the music?
Reaper, and I just played something. Thanks. Oh, let there be code. There was. Okay, so where to find info? You go to the Graffathon page and get started. Or you go to the processing site, which is processing.org. And you can get the reference from here, so you get all these nice things. So okay, I think it's, is there any questions? No, it's pretty silent. Oh.
You mentioned about like presenting the sketch, so you get rid of the...
Oh, yeah. How did it? I think it's like full screen. So let's. Okay, let's call full screen at the start of this program. We have, and you should use something else than 640 times 400, whatever. You should use like full HD or some nice other resolution. We have the compo rules in the getting started page as well, I think. So yeah, we highly recommend using it. But yeah, let's now do full screen. And Rocket is not open, you can see, and we run it. Oh, what? Okay, so errors come here, so that's a good thing to know. Okay, size and full screen cannot be used in the same sketch. Okay, if we copy this data here and say this, too many parameters for full screen. What? Oh, I think, yeah, okay. Okay, so we don't define anything, I think. Yeah, let's define full screen P2D, so it presents it in the native resolution. Okay, thanks for letting me know about this. So, no more questions? Is there? Did you have?
Assuming the presentation doesn't continue.
Yeah, the presentation, well, it continues if somebody asks something. Yeah, no problem.
I will always like this, like maybe you should mention maybe shader toy.
Yeah, you can go to shader toy and make some full screen shaders. If you want, you get some. I hope this doesn't turn my computer off. because it loads the shaders. Okay, so you get this, people have written these fragment shaders, you can use those. Or actually don't use those because it's not that good to use like stuff that you don't own. But if you use stuff that's licensed properly, then it's okay to use. What were you saying?
At least one of the examples to be downloaded.
Oh,
It was like shader toy to processing.
yeah. I think we have some kind of.
It might be easier to test something on the shader toy.
Yeah, it might be easier to test something on shader toy. But yeah, you shouldn't care about shaders probably if you're a beginner. If you know about them, you probably know about them.
They are actually quite easy.
Yeah, well they are. Yeah, that's true.
I do not understand anything about them.
Yeah.
It's still about quite easy.
Yeah. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? No. I don't think so. Oh, okay.
About the music, do you have any sites to give?
Ooh, I should have looked that up.
I have one to give at least. But
Okay. Okay, can you say a site where you can like?
yes, but wait a second.
I think Yamendo was one, but please, if you look for public domain music, please look that the license is okay to use. It's not cool to use like I don't know, download skrillex.mp3.torrent something, and like don't do that. Okay, but yeah. I think that was it. If you have any questions afterwards, you can ask anybody, or me, or somebody in the organizers. So, okay, you had a question.
I suggested that if anybody knows any good sites or something, we could send them to the Telegram or IRC or something.
Okay, so if somebody knows any good sites, people could send them to Telegram or IRC.
Just remember to look at the license first.
Yeah, remember to look at the license first.
And one, like Creative Commons is okay as long as it is not the no derivative option.
Yeah, so Creative Commons, no derivative is good. Yeah. But yeah, thanks. How many of you don't have a team yet? Okay, we could do like a team up over here actually. That might be a good option.
Then few questions more.
Okay, question?
I think this might be about how do you submit your entry?
So how do you
Is it like a tip of your processing project and
So yeah, you submit the processing sketch when you want to submit your demo in a zip file. That's good. Yeah. But I think we could finish up. And those who do not have a team or want a new team member in the team, you could stay here and let's find you a team. Okay, thanks.